Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome all of you on this final session of Humanity Rising as the Conference of Parties in Glasgow comes to a close. Over the last 12 days, we've been highlighting COP26 as the governments of the world, international institutions, corporations, lobbyists, civil society have come together as they've done now for 26 years to see what we as a world community comprised of nearly 200 countries from all over this globe can do about the most urgent crisis humanity has ever faced. The Conference of Parties have been dealing with climate change. We've been holding our discussions in the aftermath of the latest IPCC report that says that humanity is now in unprecedented territory, which the Secretary General of the United Nations said means that we're now in code red, which means that we're now in the climate tipping point. We're now in a situation where escalating, increasingly lethal ecological turbulence is no longer avoidable. And so COP26 was termed the most consequential COP in history, and we're now at a close. And it's clear, I think, to everyone around the world that once again, our governments have failed us. And so that leaves we, the people of the world, a civil society of planet Earth with more limited options, but with a greater clarity that we now need to lead in a way that we've never felt before, because up until I think COP26, we had this residual diminishing hope that in the final analysis, our governments were going to rise to the occasion, and they've chosen not to do that. So part of what we want to do today, everyone, and we will be unfolding this discussion over the next weeks and months, is to reflect on, in an immediate way, on the final day of the Conference of Parties, what the conclusions are and what the implications are. We want to look at how we're feeling about what's going on. We want to focus on our young people. There will be a video from young people that have been there at the COP. There will be young people live from Sierra Leone who have been working on climate action and are part of the Global Regeneration Corps. We'll be talking about what we can do to build under adverse circumstances, but with now more clarity that it is up to us how we can begin to fashion a global network of regeneration over the next weeks, months, and years as we live out now the implications of Code Red. So all of that is in store for us today. So I want to thank all of you for joining. I want to thank all of our live streaming partners. I want to thank our live streaming partners into the Spanish-speaking world. We're having live simultaneous translations into Spanish. I want to thank all the conveners, that many of whom you'll hear in our program today, that have convened this wonderful sessions on Humanity Rising, because all through what's been happening, the final and ultimate reality, whatever our governments are going to do or not do, is that humanity is rising. And when 2 or 3 are gathered together, let alone millions, hope is real, optimism is warranted, because even at the 11th hour, change is possible. So we want to be both ruthlessly realistic about the global context in which we find ourselves, but we want to always bear in mind that whatever the circumstances, change is equally possible. And it's now up to us to take accountability before the balances of history and do what now needs to be done to regenerate this precious world of ours. That's why we're here. That's why Humanity Rising convenes these sessions day after day and broadcasts them as far as we can around the world. Before we enter into this discussion, let us pause just for a minute or two in the tumult of our world and just take a breath and center yourself in your body. Attune yourself with your heart. See if just for the next minute, minute and a half, you can listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and deep thanksgiving that you're alive. We're all alive at this most extraordinary moment in the human journey, where every choice that we make matters. Thank you, everyone. And now with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude and love for each and every one of you who are joining our session today, we want to start with a statement from Rupert Reed in a press conference that he and others had yesterday in Glasgow. We want to do a recording because Rupert has been diagnosed with COVID. He was going to join us today, was all set to do so, but in all the exposures that he's traversed over the last 12 days in Glasgow, he's come down with COVID, so he was not able to join us today. But we want to start with his statement, which I think was a very clear summary of COP26. And then we'll have a statement of a young woman from Turkey who was part of the press conference as well. And then we'll open it up to a larger discussion of the panelists that are here today. And then our program will unfold. So let's start, Rick, with Rupert from Glasgow.
To save this planet. You know, the politicians and world leaders seem to be the last ones to be understanding the extent of this climate emergency that we're in. You know, walking the streets of Glasgow, there's posters everywhere talking about the climate emergency. I've seen urgency levels notched up, way up since Paris and Madrid. and Lima, Peru, since those COPs. But those urgency levels are in the general public that is outside the COP, in the youth. You know, young people are literally in tears fighting for their lives, and they don't see they don't see action strong enough to give them, you know, a lot of hope for the future. You know, lots of young women are refusing to even consider the idea of having children. I mean, how serious and how sad is that? They don't think that there will be a decent world for them to bring up their kids in. And as Peter and Nick said, as long as greenhouse gases continue to climb exponentially in the atmosphere, and as long as our governments continue to subsidize the fossil fuel industry, and as long as we have meetings, COP meetings, where there's actually more fossil fuel lobbyists in the blue zone than there are delegates of any other country, any country,
Hey, Jim, I've lost Rupert. I'll have to re-queue it if you want to show the other one.
Sorry, everyone. I'll share my screen.
Our second speaker is Echem Albayrak. Echem is an intern with the Human Impacts Institute and an Extinction Rebellion activist in her native Turkey. She's going to speak with us for a few minutes about what that's like, about what that feels like emotionally, and what that feels like politically. And she has a few images to accompany her remarks. Echem.
Thank you. I want to share with you something I wrote during a very difficult time when my country, Turkey, was aflame this summer. follow, I get shaken to my core. Record heat waves, historic flooding, massive wildfires, deaths, war, hatred, suffering. It's like a never-ending nightmare. I'm in a constant emotional exhaustion and want to cry and scream. In my head and mind, I don't know how to stay hopeful when the world is collapsing before my eyes at this accelerating pace. I even often feel guilty for not being able to stay hopeful all the time, beat myself up for not being able to take more action, for spending most of my energy trying to stay sane. The wiser voice in me nudges. Come on, Ejam. You know despair won't help creating the world you want to live in. It's going to be a long fight, but we can do hard things. Show up even when you're messy and afraid. That voice and the knowing of my heart can dream brighter, hazeless skies. I know there is a better world our hearts know is possible. One with empathy, healing, safety, understanding, harmony, peace, freedom, and love. Right now, I'm trying hard to listen to that knowing, that little voice inside me I can hear when I sit still instead of the stubborn chatters of my mind. Frankly, it is what keeps me here. And I wonder what would happen if we all started listening better. There's this one quote I can't seem to stop thinking about. There comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. What if we all listen to the voice of our hearts? Stop just pulling people out of the river. Stop trying so hard not to fall in ourselves and went upstream together. What more needs to happen for all of us to start going upstream? This is the question that keeps me awake at night. How can we collectively go to the upstream and make more people open their hearts to the truth and to the pain and the grief? Because we need to sit in the grief. We have to be willing to acknowledge the pain, the painful truth, because if we don't sit in the reality of the issues, we're just gonna continue fooling ourselves, and we don't have time for it anymore. I personally choose to channel my grief and despair into action. That's where I find my hope. These are some photos from some of our actions with the Extinction Rebellion in Istanbul. Those are specifically from one funeral march we did for the species that are going extinct because of climate change. The red costume is the Red Rebel Brigades, an artivist troop of Extinction Rebellion, and it symbolizes the common blood that all species share, that unifies and makes us one. And it is really powerful to be walking around on the streets wearing it, because you can see people connecting with it empathetically and they can understand the message of it. I know what I'm inviting you to do is difficult, opening our hearts to the pain and the grief. It's a deep analysis and it is painful, but we have to somehow get the strength in ourselves to feel it all. And then we have to find ways to turn it and channel it into action. We first have to feel the pain, and then we have to rise. Thank you.
Jim, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing yourself here so honestly to us. And I think I can speak for most people in the room when I say that was hard to listen to. Thank you for giving us something that was hard to listen to, that we need to listen to, and we need.
Thank you, everyone. I think Rick has queued up Rupert Reed in his opening statement, so we'll hear that now, and then we'll open it up to discussion.
So I want to make a bold claim, but I think it's true. This COP will go down in history as the COP that killed 1.5 degrees. It is not true that 1.5 degrees has been kept alive by this COP. It's not even on life support as far as I'm concerned. The analyses of the Climate Action Tracker and the UNEP Emissions Gap Report addendum are clearly showing that when you take into account what is realistically offered by this COP, then we are heading for closer to 3 degrees. And it is no longer possible to let them credibly get away with saying that that's a way of keeping 1.5 degrees alive. When I read the draft agreement the other day, I was actually shocked. I've got to admit it to you. I feel almost scandalized about myself to say that, because I've been warning for months about how ineffectual this COP was going to be. But even I wasn't expecting something as vapid as the actual document. There's basically nothing in it. Nothing by way of commitments. All it says is we want to try and do this, that, and the other in the future. It is simply an exercise in kicking the can down the road. That's it. And given that, we must conclude that 1.5 degrees is no longer credible. And this is a terrible thing to have to say, but I think it's nothing but the truth. So, because of the recalcitrance of a substantial number of countries, COP26 has failed us, and it has failed our children who are left begging for their lives. And in the light of that, I want to raise a couple of uncomfortable questions. First question is this. Yeah, sure, we can point our fingers at the fossil fuel industry, obviously, and at the countries failing to show leadership, and there are other villains as well. But what about our own role in this? Does it actually make sense to be part of a process which is so direly off the pace? Are those of us who have been strong critics of this COP, of the COP process, of the recalcitrance of those countries and so forth, are we nevertheless in some sense legitimating the process by way of being here, even as we sit here in this press conference? I'm not honestly sure what the answer to this question is, but it seems to me that we have reached the point where we need to ask a question like that. We have reached a point where we need to no longer assume that taking part in this can-kicking exercise actually makes sense. And my second uncomfortable question is this. Well, if there's anything right about my first uncomfortable question, well, should there be further elements to this can-kicking exercise? Should we be all assuming that, well, of course there'll be a COP27 at Cairo and then a COP28 and so forth? Is that also now potentially part of the problem rather than of the solution? Should there be more COPs? It will be said in response, but look, I mean, the COP process may be dire, but it's better than having no process at all, and it does at least supply some kind of legitimacy in international law to claims from protesters in courts and so forth. But what I'm saying is we have to make an honest assessment. Do the benefits at this point actually outweigh the costs? Would it be better to say, it's not 1 minute to midnight, it's not midnight, it's 5 past midnight. The COP system has failed. Arguably, it was designed to fail. It never had any sanctions built into it, as, for example, the Montreal Protocol did. There was never any way of enforcing anything that's been happening these last 25 years. Should it actually carry on? So that's my second uncomfortable question. And now my conclusion. if you think that anything that I've said is true, then we must take the first steps of fully claiming our agency and no longer outsourcing it to governments and to a process who are clearly not intending to use it to save us. And what's the implication of that? Well, right here in Glasgow, we need to find some strong way of asserting that. We need to find some strong way of asserting that we recognize, I'm going to use a bit of sort of copy language here, that we recognize that it's 5 minutes past midnight, that we recognize, that we acknowledge that our governments are not planning to save us, and that we intend to take back the power that they have abdicated using. And what that means in very small micro terms, it seems to me, in the next couple of days as this COP comes towards a close, is that not just outside the blue zone, but inside the blue zone, we should consider protesting. We should consider walking out. We should consider joining those who are outside the exits. We should consider joining those who are going to be protesting in London on Saturday. We must mark and narrate this infamous moment in human history, the moment where 1.5 became consigned to history and where it became clear that no one's coming to save us.
Thank you for that sober assessment, Reed. And
Thank you, Rick. We wanted to provide those statements from Glasgow, both from Rupert and the young woman, to give all of us a sense of the atmosphere in the aftermath of the failure of the governments that leaves the climate movement, the progressive movement, as Rupert indicates, with some very challenging choices and questions that we need to ponder. And so I just wanted to emphasize, as we now embark on our discussion, that we want to do this, everyone, in a spirit of truth pursued rather than truth possessed. We're at quite a poignantly painful moment of realization about our governments and about the need for dramatic climate action on the part of the people. And so we just want to now hear from a variety of voices. In a few minutes, we'll hear the civil society statement that just came out a few hours ago in Glasgow. And so we'll hold a lot of different pieces and perspectives and points of view as we now embark on our discussion. And I thought we would start with Shelley, who's been present every day. She's been live tweeting the entire proceedings out on Twitter. She has been looking at this very clearly. So Shelley, I'd love to hear from you, and then Ed, and then Marilyn, and then Stephanie. Shelley.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here with everyone. It has been an illuminating 12 days in many ways for many of us. I just wanted to proffer a quote from Arundhati Roy, who said, "The trouble is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There is no innocence. Either way, you are accountable." And I think that applies to myself as an individual. I think it applies to all of us collectively here in this space. And it applies to all of our brothers and sisters who aren't here with us. And part of this moment includes facing up to the grief that comes from fully taking in the consequences of what this means. The consequences between 1.1, 1.2, 1.5, 2.4 sound small, but they're not. Every 1/10 of a degree adds to the burden that we're carrying. There was a new study published in 2021 that estimates we're losing 5 million people a year right now to climate change, temperature extremes, whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold. We've just lost 5 million people to a new virus. So 10 million people in the world. And with 7.6 billion people, it sounds small, I suppose. But we know that each one of those losses was accompanied by people who cared about and loved those people. And when you look at the totality of the situation that we're in and you wonder why things like COP fail, it's because there are interests in the world who don't want it to succeed. These are the uncomfortable things that I look at. And these are the uncomfortable things that I try to take in and try to confront. Because our youth don't need more false hope. Our youth don't need us coming to them with what we feel are the solutions. I fully believe they need to be as informed as possible so that they can grieve themselves and know what it is that they are up against. Because when we talk about diminishing food resources, when we talk about diminishing water resources, those are real things that really impact people. Capitalism has a rapacious appetite, and it makes money as it's building things, and it makes money as it's destroying things. And if you go back and you read Naomi Klein and you see what happened in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in the United States, you understand the concept of shock doctrine, which is how do we take advantage of crisis in a way that benefits the shareholders. There's a new colonialism that is breaking upon the earth, a new form of it. It never really went away. This is just its latest manifestation. And it has to do with the corporate entities that are currently buying up agricultural land and water resources globally, worldwide. I started watching this really when it started taking off in 2007. According to a 2014 study, there are 126 countries now involved in purchasing and selling global farmland. And investors in the North, US, Britain, Germany, also India and the Netherlands and China are primarily seeking out land in South America, Africa, Asia, particularly Brazil, Ethiopia, the Philippines, the Sudan, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Tanzania. It's estimated in a 2013 study that between 0.07% and 1.75% of the world's agricultural land is now being transferred to foreign investors. In 2005, a book came out called Blue Gold. I don't know how many people have heard of it. There's also a documentary on YouTube that I can put in the links and in the tweet. And the title of the book was Blue Gold, The Fight to Stop Corporate Theft of the World's Water. And the vice president of the World Bank was quoted as saying, the wars of the next century will be about water. And we've been seeing this coming and coming and coming. 2005, COP, 2006, COP, 2007, COP. Here we are, 2021, COP. And these types of acquisitions bring up lots of questions about Indigenous peoples who are being affected. What happens when there is potentially a multiple breadbasket failure in the global north? How will they take advantage of the agricultural lands that they have purchased for production in the global south? And what kinds of issues are we up against? Well, this is the reality of what climate change means. It doesn't have to mean that everywhere, but we can't face it without telling the truth. It's not enough to put a garden in your yard, and I think that's great if you do, please do. And anything you can possibly think of to do for yourself and your local communities, all the positive projects you can do, by all means do them. Do not stop. Do not stop. But don't denigrate the grief being felt by people, and don't deny the potential of harm that will come to millions of individuals based on the government's failures. We don't need more denial about what's happening. We need more truth about what's happening. You can hold the negative and the positive at the same time, because you must. You must hold both, and you must reconcile both inside of you, and join together with people, as many people as possible, to make as positive a difference as you can. But understand that there are people who know what's coming and they are preparing for it. In October of this year, quietly and without fanfare, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in the United States released a report called Climate Change and International Responses, Increasing Challenges to U.S. National Security through 2040. And people are fond of telling me that the US is not the world, and I understand that. The US is not the world. But what we can't deny is that we have an outsized influence on things that happen. And in that report, the United States military is very clear. We're going to hit 1.5 by 2030. Past 2 degrees by 2050 with catastrophic and nonlinear changes. That is what they are preparing for. That is what they are preparing for. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. This is a page from the report. I'll put the link in so that you can read it. But this is their assessment of the Paris Agreement and the threats that are coming. And the ones I want to focus on are cross-border water tension and conflict, high risk by 2040, medium risk by 2030.
Shelley, could you go full screen, please?
Am I not full screen? I don't know how to do that. Anyway, I'll stop sharing, and I'll put the link in so you can see it. And what's important about that is they are recognizing and talking about the strains on energies and food systems, greater demands for humanitarian relief. And at the same time, the US military emits more CO2 than as many as 140 other countries combined. So while at the same time, we're talking about reducing carbon emissions and the dangers that will come if we don't, we're preparing to meet those dangers by emitting carbon. It is a unbelievably vicious circle. It's estimated 77 to 80% of the US entire greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to our military. And we don't have good figures on this because the Paris Agreement and other agreements have exempted militaries in the world from having to really account for those CO2 emissions. The United States military in 2016 got permission to build 2 military bases in South America from Argentina. And I'm sure talking about these things will put me on some list somewhere. I'm already there, being an anti-war protester. And these are just 2 examples that I want to put in front of you to show that this is only happening in this area, but many other countries with many other military operations are doing this in Africa. They're doing it in other places around the world. The first base that we're putting in is at Tierra del Fuego, which has access to numerous Antarctic islands and access to valuable water supplies. The Antarctic currently has the largest freshwater reserve in the world. Chile, Argentina, US, and the UK are discussing a new base in the capital of Tierra del Fuego. And the US has refused to sign the compact to protect water spaces and ship travel in that area. They've also put in a new base over what's known as the Triple Frontier, which is over the Guarani Aquifer. This is on the border of Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. This is the world's largest reservoir of drinkable fresh water and the second largest source of natural gas resources in Latin America. And if you start to cast this out, you start to see what the consequences of climate change are, the things they admit behind closed doors, and the ways that they are preparing to deal with this and adapt to it from their own perspective. Yesterday, Nancy Pelosi, the United States Speaker of the House, was at COP. She was asked a direct question by a journalist who asked specifically about the carbon emissions from the US military. And Nancy gave the typical nuanced political answer. Of course, we want to protect the water and soil for children, and we want to create good, clean jobs. But she just flat out said it's also a national security issue because of migration and conflict around resources. This is completely bipartisan in the United States, regardless of what happens with our government. There is absolutely no indication that we are going to move off of that position. And that position at 1.1 is irritating. That position at 1.5 is dangerous. That position at 2.4 is untenable. So what I want to say is this. I love all of you. I love everybody who's here. And I want to see us rise to the occasion as a community while we're internalizing the reality of what just happened in COP means for the forces who are undermining its success to begin with. Allow us space to grieve. Allow us time to look. Allow us time to tell the truth. And then let's band together and take every action we can possibly take as a civil society to ensure that we preserve as much life, human, animal, and plant as possible. We have a large job ahead of us. We have great things to do, and I think we will do it. And we'll do it if we're able to be honest with ourselves, honest with each other, and honest with the youth in particular. So thank you so much for being here. I'll be doing a program more in depth on these issues in the coming weeks for those of you who would like to tune into that. And in the meantime, I am looking at the youth behind us saying, it's your time. We need to get out of the way. It's your time. We will help as much as we possibly can, but we need to get out of your way. So thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. It's a sobering thought that the same forces that produce climate change are now preparing to make money as the results of their actions are sowing seeds of chaos around the world, that we're in the middle of climate shock doctrine, as Naomi Klein so aptly points out. So thank you for bringing that aspect in to our deliberations today. I want to now turn to Ed Muller, who has convened 4 sessions on Humanity Rising. Ed, would love to hear your comments, and then Tom, then Marilyn, and then Stephanie. And we'll go from there.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, where to start? 30 plus years ago, I started working and talking about climate change. I soon moved to global change, and still we're stuck with the dialogue of climate change. Global change is the loss of the capacity of the planet to support life, and especially human life, but all other life forms. And I was accused of being apocalyptic. And many friends, experts of the UN system and the ones who write all these beautiful reports said, Edward, your language will only scare the corporate sector, and you cannot scare them, otherwise they won't collaborate. I mean, that is the mindset of many of the people. Friends that are scientists that belong to the IPCC or the biodiversity working groups still contradict some of my statements in networks saying, Edward, you cannot prove this is climate change. This is climate variability. And this reductionist science is what has allowed these corporate sectors and the corrupt governments that work with them, and even the universities that are still teaching professionals to spray poison with a very, very narrow view, without even taking the rest of the planet into account and all the systemic connections. So the being afraid of hurting the corporate sector, which takes the funding from their big salaries in many of the international systems that depend on these donations. And I remember going to New York for SDG 17, paying my own way. And every time we opened a working session, thanks was given to the 5 or 6 biggest and most corrupt and most damage-provoking corporates. Thank you, so-and-so and so-and-so, for allowing this meeting to happen. You look at SDG 17, and it's all about the corporate sector saving the planet. And we saw this happen now in COP. I didn't expect anything in COP, and I thank Jim and the whole team for organizing these parallel sessions. I came from an activist point, even though I was an academic. There were years where I traveled over 300 days, going to all these global meetings, going to talk with presidents, with congresses. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, wow, you're wasting your life, getting all these rays from the airplanes. You're wasting your time, and that is not going to change things. So these bingos, big international NGOs, the conventions, all the beautiful talk. Today I had to put on a tie for an academic issue here at the university, but when I go and look all these fashion shows at these meetings, and it's just not going to make the change. The corporate sector is not going to make the change. I remember when we started with the Global Partnership for Business and Biodiversity, and all what it did was allow corporates to greenwash even more. The compensation, the valuation, putting a monetary value on nature allowed governments and corporates to put price on nature and pay for the damage, as if that were a solution. Today, still an environmental impact assessment, which most universities are teaching how to do it, is about reducing the negative impact, and the planet cannot take any more negative impacts. 2/3 of the planet don't support life, our life, human life, because the ecosystems are so damaged. So it's useless to keep on describing all the problems. We know them. This is, and I say that every time, the best scientifically documented planetary extinction. And we have the wrong science for it. With this reductionist science is not relating the true solutions. We know already that soil and soil health is the only way to revert climate change. We have the data out there that changing cattle production around the world to holistic grazing systems will capture 43 gigatons of carbon. And if we add regenerative agriculture, we're talking about 55 gigatons per year. That is all global emissions and 50% more. And these solutions are not being discussed. Maybe because it means getting rid of the chemicals. And the petrochemical industry is funding a lot of people around the world and funding a lot of universities around the world that keep on damaging the planet and educating students to damage the planet. Universities are also teaching in their MBAs competition, where they should be teaching, and from kindergarten, we should be teaching collaboration. So we have the solutions, and we know that these solutions are working. Now, two things we need to do, very concrete. Show that these solutions work, and that's what Costa Rica Regenerativa is about, Regenerate Costa Rica, the initiative that my university is leading to turn the country into a regenerative country, to show the world what a regenerative country looks like. And this is in spite of government. It's with the people. And the second thing we have to do is mainstream. So we need to cross the chasm of early adopters. I've been with a compost in my house for over 30 years. At the beginning, not a single neighbor that actually came to complain because I was going to collect rats and it was going to affect them. Today, composting is pretty accepted around my neighborhoods. So it takes time, but we don't have that time anymore. So we really need to scale it up. And I think this is what the Alliance of University for International Cooperation and Ubiquity and all the other partners, Donut Economics, Action Lab, and many others, is setting the way. Training, educating youth so they know we don't have to learn to adapt to a collapsing planet. I get upset, my intestines get upset when I hear about climate change adaptation. So we cannot keep on thinking that we need to learn to adapt to a collapsing planet. That is not possible. We still have time to build the future we want. And nature last year, and I've said this several times, nature has the ability to work with us. Last year, we gave it a few months vacation. All we did was give it vacation, let it be. And it cleaned the air, cleaned the atmosphere, cleaned the oceans. Life came back to our towns, to our cities, to the rural areas. And then we just went back to normal. Build back better, another disgusting term. Build back better. We cannot build back. We need to bounce beyond to a new future. And this is what we can do together. So youth, please trust us, work with us. Let us help you design and build your future. Don't tell anybody you have to learn how to build it, to get used to a collapsing planet. We still have time. We can actually reverse climate change to a degree where we gain time for all these other political and electric cars and everything else to come on if we work together. In 5 years, we could already be getting close to 400 parts per million again, and that would allow us to start reverting things. In 20 years, we could be under 350 parts per million. So let's do it together. Let's work. Let's join. If anybody that has funding listens to this, support these initiatives. Ugo, who will speak later on this call, he developed this beautiful way to collect information about people, a hive, and to put us in contact, because we need to network all the networks. So as the bad part of society, military, presidents, big bureaucrats from the international systems have aligned, we need to align. We need to get to enough mass, critical mass, to have it run off on its own and just leave the old system behind. Let's follow Buck Fuller. Let's not fight the system. It's useless to even waste a drop of saliva talking to a president or talking to a corporate sector. They can promise whatever they want. And if they want to, they can do it. I'm not against them, these big, horrible companies turning into regenerative agriculture. Go ahead, but that's not where it's going to come. It's going to come from us, from civil society. I think that's one of the good things that came out of the COP. Everybody said, finally, look, it's in our hands. We cannot leave it in the hands of anybody else. So join the hive, join our networks, and let's network and network and network. Let's get this out in all the languages. Let's put out training courses on how to regenerate. The beautiful thing about regeneration, it is using nature. So we told people wrongly, we need to take care of nature. Nature does not need any taking care of. It can take care of itself. It will help us. So we need to understand that if nature doesn't live, we don't live. And that's a different power structure. So let's just join together, get into the hive, and let's work. And I'll give all my heart and my experience and my knowledge, maybe you can call it wisdom, to anybody who wants it. But I cannot do it from one to one person. I can do it in a network. And that's a way we can save time and really scale this up. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Ed. These are inspiring words in the realization that it's up to us and that we can do it if we network ourselves in the necessary way at the right scale. I think that's part of the conversation we need to have is how do we scale this so that it actually makes the kind of difference we so passionately seek. So thank you so much for that. I'd like to now bring in Tom Eddington. He convened our panel on endangered species. I would just want to remind everybody we have some time constraints, so that if we can be a little bit more concise, that would be helpful, because we want to get an opportunity to have all our speakers and then the youth who we want to bring in to comment. So Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And I'd like to maybe echo many of the comments made by Ed. This morning I've been reminded, and certainly over the last period of time with COP26, I've been reminded of the monkey traps that used to be set to capture monkeys, and they were coconut shells that were hollowed out, or a hole was made in them just big enough for the monkey to put its open hand into the coconut, and the coconuts would be filled with rice. And once the monkey would put its hand into the coconut, and the coconut was attached to a stake, and when it grabbed the rice, it couldn't take its hand out of the coconut. And the monkey became a prisoner of its own grasp. And I'd like to use that and put that out there as a metaphor for where we are as a species. And we all are prisoners of our own grasp. We've become completely dependent upon the petroleum economy that has been created around the world over the last 100 years. And each of us need to look at what are we grasping for, and what are we prisoners of? And ultimately, we're all prisoners of the consciousness that we're bringing into the world. And I shared in the Endangered discussion last week that if we were to do a normal distribution of human consciousness, a percentage of humanity is truly awake and doing the things that are necessary to shift the consciousness of how we're being with nature. And a certain percentage, a small percentage, are truly asleep. But the vast majority, I believe, of humanity is pretending to be asleep. And we know, any of us who've been parents trying to wake our children in the morning to get them ready for school, that the hardest people to wake are those pretending to be asleep. And that's the reality of where we are as a species. It's the reality of where each of us are and how we're living our lives. And we need to stop pretending to be asleep. We need to take the actions. And each of our political leaders, as they demonstrated in the COP sessions this week and last week, and the business leaders, they're all victims of their grasp. They're all victims of the systems that they're operating in. They may have wonderful intentions. They may be well-meaning, but they're prisoners of their grasp. They're prisoners of what they're holding on to and the systems that they're operating in. And so we absolutely have to recognize that it's up to each of us. If we want to see a different world, each of us have to take the actions that are necessary. Each of us have to look at, what are we holding on to? And are we a prisoner of our grasp hand inside that metaphorical coconut? And what are we prepared to change? What are we prepared to do differently? And I can share lots of information that was shared in the session last week on endangered species and the collapsing of the ecosystems, but we all know that. We all are experiencing, we've heard it. And it's time for change. It's time for each of us to take the actions that are necessary. And I'll leave it there. And thank you all.
Thank you so much, Tom. And I just want to acknowledge all the work that you and Endangered Global are doing to save our endangered species. You know, as you all know, species are going extinct every minute of every day somewhere in the world. And we're in the midst of the 6th mass extinction of our planetary history, triggered by us humans. And Tom is really on the forefront of trying to save as many endangered species as are possible. So I just want to acknowledge, Tom, all the work that you're doing in that sector of our common struggle. And I hope you put Endangered Global, put the link in the chat box. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Now let's turn to Marilyn Hamilton, the founder of Integral City Meshworks. She was the one who got the civil society report that just came out in the aftermath of COP. So Marilyn, if you could just summarize that for all of us. That's another part of what's happening over there in Glasgow as we speak. Then we'll have Stephanie Mines, and then Indra, if you could get ready, and then we'll get Dita, and then we're going to turn to some of our youth for their comments on what's been said so far. Marilyn.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And for those who are watching our sessions on cities, I had said that cities are Gaia's regeneration hubs. And so I'm always looking not only for the voices of government and business, but where are citizens and culture and civil society. And today I was very happy about 5 hours ago to find in The Guardian the reference to a whole new separate declaration out of COP26 that's coming from civil society. So the People's COP26 decision for climate justice is what I'd like to tell you about. And if I'm able to, I'll share my screen so you can track it with me. I've put the link in the chat as well. And I just think it's worth, after having listened to Rupert Reed, listen to some of the aspects that they have covered here. They're basically saying, people are tired of waiting for governments to prioritize people and the planet over profits. Well,
Hey,
so
Marilyn,
many lives
Marilyn, could you move your dialog box from Zoom above? It's creating a black space.
How do I do that?
Just click on it, or there it goes. It moved. It got worse.
It got worse, yes. Sorry.
Well, let's just go with what you got. Okay, sorry. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, I can't tell on my own screen. So as I was saying, what's in the People's Declaration are these demands. Number one, global North countries pay their climate debt. Secondly, deliver a global goal for adaptation. Thirdly, address climate injustice and pay up for loss and damage. Fourthly, urgently deliver your fair share of actions. So they say here, governments must ensure that their emission reduction targets are sufficient to meet the 1.5 degrees target by urgently strengthening 2030 targets to rapidly reduce emissions to real zero, fully in line with each country's fair share. Fifth, reject false solutions. So I think this is going back to some of the things that Shelley was saying. So we're not looking at false solutions and net zero. They're asking for the reality checks around nature-based approaches that Ed was speaking to. 6, no trade-off of human rights. 7th, big polluters removed from this process. As some of the people in the chat were horrified to find out, parties that were represented at the COP26 from those with vested interests in fossil fuels exceeded the numbers of people from countries themselves. 8th, deliver just transitions. So the group is saying parties must deliver just transitions as defined in the Paris Agreement with reference to decent work and quality jobs. Labor rights are human rights, and countries must guarantee full engagement of workers and their unions through social dialogue processes in raising climate ambition and the creation of decent work, quality jobs, social protection, and universal public services. And 9th, cooperation and solidarity. So this moves us to their 10th article, which is do not exclude the people. Prioritize an inclusive, democratic, and just UN FCCC process that recognizes and respects all rights holders. This requires the meaningful inclusion of persons with disabilities by recognizing them as formal constituency. They say the time for words without action has come and gone. We no longer have the luxury of time to sit back. Governments must immediately heed the growing demand of those already facing crisis and those who will face crisis, and bravely reimagine our world in a way that guarantees everyone the right to live with dignity and in harmony with our planet. The era of injustice is over. I don't know about you, but when I read that in the newspaper, I cheered. And I then went and looked further at the website and wondered, well, who are the people who are involved with the coalition? And the first name at the top of the coalition members is 350.org. And any of you who were with us on day one, 350.org was with us on day one. There are hundreds of names from organizations, from individuals, and from the areas that they're wanting to work in, which is learning about everybody's movements, collaborating, centering voices of those most impacted, and working with logistics of all of these different power groups so that the People's Summit and civil society voices, spaces, and places are connected. So I feel that this is really something that is inspiring me, and takes me even back to what I noticed when I was thinking about cities again. I saw a remark that was tweeted from Sadiq Khan, who is the mayor of London, who said, if cities can do this, why can't nations? So if civil society has finally said not only what's in this declaration, but many of those signatories got up and walked out today, just exactly what Rupert Reed had suggested ought to be done, but he despaired of not happening. So I would say that there is cause for some hope, and that we must share these possibilities with our youth, just as we must share with them the inconvenient truths that Shelley was pointing to, that we not only need to allow space for grief, but we need space to wake up, grow up, clean up, and whole up in service to our whole planet. So that's what I have to contribute, and with some hope and some passion, as you can tell.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. I think you summarized in just a few minutes with real clarity and passion, both the choices before us and the imperative now for the people of the world to take the kind of action that is now required. So thank you for bringing in that statement, which is just hot off the press globally. So we were very pleased to be able to present it to everyone. Now like to turn it over to Stephanie Mines, who's the founder of Climate Change and Consciousness, who's also brought in some of the young people. And I'm just thinking, Stephanie, after you speak, why don't you introduce the young people, have them make a statement of what they're doing, and then we'll circle back to Indra and move forward from there. Thank you so much for everything that you've been doing.
Thank you, Jim. I have spent my entire life preparing for this moment. I have spent my entire life preparing for this moment. Alchemizing grief into action is the story of my life. As an embryologist and a neuroscientist, I know that we are biologically programmed for evolution. I reference Uncle Anganak of Greenland, who has been on a lifetime mission to melt the ice in the heart of man. He told us at Climate Change and Consciousness in 2019 that it was too late and no one was coming. Yes, it is too late and no one is coming. That is the mantra I have lived with as a child in a violent home. And here I am fighting for the future of humanity when it has been too late and no one has shown up for my entire life. So the truth is, humanity is rising. It is all that is left. I stand with Rebecca Solnit and Osprey Oriel Leaf, arousing a groundswell, a paradise built in hell. What is the strategy? For me, it is a global regeneration core. It is the physical and mental health of our communities and our families. It is the youth, and particularly Indigenous youth and women, who, as we speak, are regenerating their communities with their bare hands. As an elder, I must advocate for them as I advocate for my own children. I believe we must listen deeply to Indigenous leaders and to youth. And I also believe and invest in educating people to be practical, culturally sensitive health practitioners, because the health consequences of climate disruption may be our greatest threat. I have been told all my life that health is wealth, and I have educated myself to identify the physiology of resilience, and I will share that with everyone. I am committed to a regenerative health paradigm that is within reach, and I have designed a pathway to distribute effective clinically tested resources broadly. I also know that our teachers are the young people who are here, like Alpha and Yusuf, who invest every breath in regenerating agriculture, cultural regeneration, and saving their desertified, raped, and colonized country from extinction. I know what it means to fight with nothing. That is how I have survived. My offering is in the evolution of consciousness and how hidden populations can come out of where they are hiding, like the parteras and curanderas in Puerto Rico when Hurricane Maria struck and no one came. I devote myself to the hidden, strangled voices that are ready to speak. I devote myself to a paradise built in hell. And I'd now like to introduce Yusuf Karoma and Alpha Cargbo, who are fighting the good fight every day of their lives in their beloved country, Sierra Leone. Yusuf, would you kindly share what you are doing in your region, in your area?
All right. Good evening, all to you. Good evening.
Welcome, Yusuf. Welcome.
Yeah. So I am Yusuf, a climate change activist from the world, Sierra Leone.
Yusuf, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Maybe turn off your video. I think you should turn off your video.
Yeah, turn off
Thank
your
you.
video and maybe we'll hear you better that way.
All right. Hello.
Good.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, we hear you.
Yeah. Are you? All right. I am Yusuf Usman Koroma, a climate change activist from Youth Leading the World, Sierra Leone, Masimbi Group. In my country, Sierra Leone, different companies and individuals engage in deforestation. And this has led in the great impact of people and the farmers as a whole. And as youth in the sustainable change, I thought it well of it to embark on this developmental move for Youth Leading the World, Sierra Leone. We have planted about 200 trees with school-going pupils, and they help us in the taking care of these trees. And we also want to establish schools garden with different schools. But we sit and thought it wise that, is that really enough for us? The answer is no, really, because that might not be sustainable for the community and the country as a whole. So we also want to establish a large scale of tree planting or afforestation, which we have discussed with some stakeholders, and they have reassured us for accessing the land where has been deforested. Before this time, we've not been straining about water facility, and but this time, we do have challenges of accessing water, I mean pure water, due to the deforestation in our country and our community. And now the season that we are approaching, we do suffer for water, and that has to do with the implication of health and well-being, since we cannot access pure water in our community or the country as a whole due to this climate change. If I may talk on this, we also have what we call energy resilience, which is also a factor that disturbs Sierra Leone. In my country, I really felt pity for ourselves as youth, that only 23% of people access electricity. Only 23 people access electricity in our country. Coming to the schools and the hospital, the health centers also do not have sustainable energy. Never mind, we are using generators and and dams. And this has to do with the climatic system. Since as a least developed country like Sierra Leone, we do embark on agriculture, but agriculture there has to do with nature. And the nature is being disturbed by the human activities, which is a key factor that is disturbing the agricultural process in our country. And it's led to what? Increment of poverty due to what? The farmers cannot yield a successful harvest into their farms or productivity. And I would like to share a story due to the energy resilience in my community and my country. As a youth, really, I was not happy when I found myself in that particular circumstance. It's this story I want to share to you about my grandfather. There is one time when he was seriously sick and he was taken to the health center, I mean the hospitals. And our hospitals here are not reliable of energy, and we are not using clean energy. Though I am advocating for us to use green energy, and I think that is affordable and sustainable, and that it can prevent another challenges of climate change. So I took my father to the hospital, and by then he was seriously sick. All I had to experience is when he was given an oxygen, so that doctors were trying to cater for his life and fighting for his life, for his survival. There comes what? A breakdown of a blackout. After 2 to 3 minutes, when he has given that oxygen, then the light went off. And definitely he could not make it. There comes his end of his life. And I came to realize that that is a reason and a factor that this sustainability of energy do disturb the lives of our people in our community and the country as a whole. So as a youth in my country and humanity reason, I found myself involved because we still have time to change the narrative. We still have time to be part of this involvement. So in my community, we really want to work together with these people, the stakeholders, the institutions, which we have started by educating some institutions, establishing gardens in our community and the country. So with this, we as Youth Leading the World, activists in Sierra Leone, we want to see ourselves in this involvement of change. And we also want to have a sustainable change in our country. Thank you.
Beautiful, Yusuf. We heard you loud and clear. And in the name of your grandfather, we support you and we will do everything we can to move your mission forward. So if we can take a few more minutes now to hear from your friend Alpha Cardbo, also in Sierra Leone. Alpha?
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for giving me such an opportunity. I want to say good evening from Sierra Leone to all of you that have made it possible to be part of this engagement. I am Alpha, the Youth Leading the World coordinator for Sierra Leone team. And our focus, creating this group or having involved in this particular group, is to wipe climate change out of our country. I have listened to COP26, the climate summit, their plans they are to put together in order to see the case of climate change rest in peace. And I like all their actions they want to put in place. In my country, Sierra Leone, we face a lot of challenges that causes too much of the problems about climate change. And as youths, we think we are the only sustainable change that can stand and fight against this particular disasters problem that has been happening as a result of the climate change. Years back, it happens every year in Sierra Leone that we face flooding, landslide, and the rest of those disasters that happen as a result of climate change. We look at these things that has been happening. We say we have to put a stop to that. If we cannot put a stop, then let's find ways in which we can minimize some of these things. And we have done a lot of actions in order to minimize some of these problems that causes the climate change. And with the help of our international supporters, Stephanie, Michelle, Sue, and others, we have been doing all of these activities like picking plastic waste from the streets, plastic bottles, doing tree planting with school-going people and community people, and sensitizing also school-going people, community people about the true cause of climate change. Why we choose to sensitize is that when some of these disasters happened, like last year, year before last, we have a landslide that killed over thousands of people. We have flooding happening in Sierra Leone that kills over thousands of people. But our people keep on saying, it is not our activities we do that causes this problem to happen. They keep saying it is God's anger over our sins. So sometimes we think as youth that if these particular activities like deforestation continually continue in our country, it will lead to a problem for the future. And hence we are youth, we must create a way in order to help provide a perfect atmosphere for our next generation to come. So therefore, we embark on school sensitization to educate school-going people so that they can go home and educate their parents to tell them the true cause of climate change, to tell them that our activities we are doing causes some of these problems. And so these activities must be learned how to minimize these activities. And for some of the communities, we've engaged school-going pupils, we've engaged community stakeholders, we are seeing some amount of change. The change of climate change, I mean, we all have to come together to put hands together so that we can fight climate change at once. It is not a single body. It is not only government can wipe off this thing. It also involves the responsibility of each and every citizen to stand and fight this particular fight. And so before fighting, you must understand what is the impact of climate change. What is the negative effects? What is the positive effect, if it has any positive effect? So therefore, we choose to educate these people that this reason and this reason causes this particular thing to happen. There are companies, there are individual people that has been engaging in cutting down trees in forests continually. And when they cut down trees, they don't do reforestation. They don't replace those trees. But first, we want to go and know what is their problems. So we went on as youth. We first of all try to ask them, how is these activities they are doing affect the farmers around them? So we interviewed the farmers. The farmers told us a lot. We put them into record. We went also to ask them, you people that are doing these particular activities, do you think they are rightful activities to protect your country? Why are you doing this? Then can you stop it? What will you need so that you can stop it? And we have their necessary response, which we also put into record. By so doing, we have known our weakness, we have known our strength, and having known all of those things, now we can come in, apply our own ideas so that to rest this case, so that we can minimize these activities that destroy the climate. You know, when we started the tree planting, it was not really easy for us. We engaged community stakeholders. We tried to have some gardens established in schools, garden established in communities, so that it will help to what? To build up some amount of forest in our communities, so that we cannot expose the land into the direct sun, so that we can escape from global warming. And all of those activities and all of those things has contributed to something negative. That is why now in Sierra Leone, farmers are running away from farming activities, because years back, when they grow crops, they have a huge amount of produce. But now, a farmer may have something like 7 bags planted, let me say 7 bags of rice planted. In the day of harvest, maybe he or she could not have even 6 bags or 5 bags of rice. So instead of having some amount of profit in agriculture, they face what we call losses. So therefore, people keep running away from agriculture, not knowing that what some of these activities that destroy the climate causes some of these things. In Sierra Leone, when we have raining season, we have excessive rain that almost many parts in our country are prone to floodings. In Sierra Leone, when we have dry season, we have original dry season. In fact, you will not see rain for some times. And so people struggle to have water. People walk from miles to miles to have water. So these problems has been highlighted. We know these problems, but sometimes we want to extend our workshop, but we are looking at our international partners as to providing support so that we can extend some of our activities. We can empower the youth so that they can pioneer this particular climate change activities because we think we are the only sustainable changers that could change this particular situation in the next coming 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alpha. Thank you, Yusuf, and thank you, Stephanie, for making it possible for them to come in electronically. And we welcome both of you into the Global Regeneration Corps as we're beginning to build it out as we move beyond COP26. So we'll be hearing more from Yusuf and Alpha over the next weeks and months as the GRC takes shape. We want to hear now from Indra Adnan, and then briefly from Dita Vizoso, and then we'll conclude our program with a discussion of the Global Regeneration Corps. But Indra, you've heard just about everything. Would love to just hear your comments on the various points of view so far.
Yeah, thank you so much. And in fact, if you don't mind, I'd like to invite Alpha and Yusuf to open their cameras again so that I can feel, and I really want to feel the sense of who I'm speaking to and who I'm getting behind. As I make just a few comments, I won't spend too much time. So Yusuf and Alpha, if you don't mind, just coming back so that I can feel my connection with you. And I, just to, in a way, summarize what I've been feeling, which has been, you know, quite a ride, if you like, of emotions. Listening to Rupert speaking as he did and knowing that he's suffering from COVID at this moment, I feel very much like him that something came to an end in this past 10 days. In a sense, a dream was over. And like Shelley, I really want to acknowledge that the thing that we might have been, or maybe too many people may have been investing in for too long, in a sense, has to now be allowed to be let go. And I think more than one person has said that maybe we should no longer now be holding COP, conferences of the parties, because if anything, they raise too much false hope of the idea that the governments are the people who will solve this crisis for us, when we know ourselves historically that governments have until now represented the very forces that have caused climate change to happen. And we need to move on. And what I'm hearing from other quarters is that the flame has been lit. And this flame is what I'm hearing from Yusuf, I'm hearing from Alpha, I'm hearing from Greta, that there is a flame of hope alive, which is, it's not too late. We can still do something in the face of this crisis. And hearing from Edward, he is showing us that he's been with all the people that he's been working with over the last 10, 15, 20, his whole lifetime. The solutions are available. So let's hold on to these two things. One, the solutions are already available. Two, the flame has been lit. But let's not lose sight of the fact that there is a lot missing in between those two things. What is missing is the ability for the people to organize themselves well enough to be able to be connected to the solutions. At the moment, as it stands, there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of good projects that are starting up all over the world, but they find it hard to be integrated. They find it hard to move into a coherent system, a real alternative, if you like, to the old system that is still actively destroying our planet. And this is what I really want to draw attention to, the necessity to build what we've described here in Humanity Rising more than once, the parallel polis, almost like another future is possible, let's build it, the very thing that Buckminster Fuller told us was possible. What I want to draw attention to in the few minutes here is that this is not a new thing. This is not something that has to be started from scratch. Most of us have spent a lifetime slowly wishing this into existence or hoping that something like this could arise, not initially in response to climate crisis, but maybe in response to other global crises that people have been living through for all of their lifetimes, whether it is the crisis of inequality or the crisis of global health, or you name it. We have been in a crisis for most of the 20th century that has required the organizing of people to challenge it, and that hasn't been possible. Yet for the last 30 years, I've been calling it a revolution. We've been in a revolution for over 30 years because of the internet and the ability for us to share tools, practice, and practical ways of enhancing solutions. This has been slowly building. And what is possible now for us, and only just beginning to be possible, is for the people, and I'm thinking now as broadly as possible with that term, the people everywhere to be moving into self-organized citizens' action networks of all kinds to bring people together in the place where they live to get access to the solutions that are possible. This is what we would describe as fractals forming, which have a possibility of fractal scaling. This moving of people together to be connected with solutions is something that is now taking shape, and I would say has been taking shape for the last 15 years. What it needs to really accelerate it is a shift in the global narrative, and that requires a shift and a new media system to be built, and therefore a shift in the ability for the people's voices to be heard. Now, I'm not saying or suggesting that in a parallel polis, this new system that Bucky Fuller described and anticipated is trying to take over the old one. We don't even have time for that. What we do have time for is to build this parallel system, give voice to the people, and have this growing voice influence and change the governments and the businesses that are currently still in charge. Why would that work? Because governments always look for votes and business continues to look for customers. But if there's nowhere for the people's voices to be heard, they won't change. So I just want to give it back to Yusuf and to Alpha that all of our efforts to build the new media, to build the CANs, the movement of citizen action networks everywhere, to connect us to the global, to the essential solutions that Ed and others have been describing. All of this work will be to get behind what you are doing, to give you the ballast, to give you the context in which you can succeed. And I hope that you can feel and sense how many people are behind the efforts that you can make as we gather here today. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Indra. I think that's a powerful image that you brought in, that a certain dream has died with COP26. And at the same time, a certain flame has been lit. And the challenge is really, how do you connect people with solutions and then network those people and solutions in a global network? I mean, that's really the challenge of our time. And I think you've stated it as concisely as anyone I've heard lately. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. And I think this is the perfect place to segue to the Global Regeneration Corps, because what the Global Regeneration Corps is seeking to do is exactly what Indra just called for. And so I'd like to now turn it over to Leslie Southwick Trask, the Chief Development Officer at Ubiquity and the coordinator of the GRC, and Hugo from 7 Vortex, who's been building our hive. We want to do this in the spirit of biomimicry, and what's more biomimic than a hive. So Leslie, tell us about the GRC and next steps, and Hugo, look forward to your images.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I just want to say thank you from the traditional lands of the Nitsapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy, where I'm coming from today. And while I'm a global citizen, I honor the place and space from which I speak from. You know, I just want to say this is the Global Regeneration Corps. What happened over the last 12 days is the GRC. Everyone who spoke today is a first responder of the GRC. It's not something amorphous that sits outside of us. This is what the Global Regeneration Corps is. It's an intergenerational movement where we have voice and action to make a difference in this world. And what we've been doing with the hive, and I'm going to turn it over in a moment to Hugo to share how we're making the invisible visible. I want to say that we deeply honor that as much of the scaffolding that we're talking about the outer world is what is going on in the inner. And in the Girl-Driven Solutions, our Women's Summit, what we've learned is that you cannot change the SDGs unless you do the inner development work. And that is what this also is with the Global Regeneration Corps. We believe that the state of being is fundamental to us making the changes that we're looking in this world. And that state of being is our inner compass, is our inner knowing, is our inner belief systems that allow us to see and have agency in the world. So in the GRC, we believe in equipping and empowering ourselves to take a type of action that is resonant in this changing landscape. And so for that reason, we concentrate as much on the inner development of our, what we call the rainbow warrior within us that's ready and resilient and imaginary in this world. We lost a very important Indigenous leader yesterday, Lee Miracle, who has always said that community is in the imagination, that citizenship is in the imagination, that we are in our imagination who we are in this world. And so the Global Regeneration Corps, in shaping pods, in bringing people together in place and space, and enabling them to give voice to the regenerative action that they are passionate about, and then equipping them with whatever educational mentorship and support that they require to take that action. That's what the GRC does. So when you identify as being wanting to join a pod or mentor a pod or lead a pod or start one, this is the action that we're looking for. A pod is 5 to 8 people who are together in shared purpose. We know that shared purpose isn't enough, that we need the pro-social skills that allow us to embed the sense of cooperation and collaboration that is needed. Because really good groups have high diversity. Really great pods have conflict in the sense of they're different among their members so that they can build and create innovation. And so we need the pro-social skills that allow us to navigate through that collaborative process. So the pods, as they get created, are going to be oriented with a conversation around their action. We believe strongly that that state of being is where the learning process really takes flight. And so we're going to be offering inside those pods our soft skills, our SDG nuggets, which are all about how do we initiate change from the inside out and then the outside in. We believe in equipping ourselves so that we're ready for the kind of work, and that ready means by today, not ready in 6 months, by today. What that means, though, is that we are calling, as the Regeneration Corps is, it's a call to action. We're calling for you to come in through, if you have not yet, the GRC website, globalregenerationcorps.com, to say that you want to join and come into a pod, and we will help whatever way we can in helping you identify who to play with, who to regenerate with, and then support you in the community building that will enable you to take the kind of action that you're passionate about. So it is about being in community. It is about also being in physical space where this action can take place. And it is about learning. And let's be very clear that the mentorship is not about a boomer generation mentoring the youth. We just got mentored today from Yusuf and Alpha. Mentorship is a shared process. We all have much to learn from each other. And so as we equip ourselves, it's being in community with those that can teach us and can hear us at the same time. That's what we're doing in terms of the pods. And so we really urge you to come in, and I'll put the link into the chat, which is through our GRC group on the Ubiverse, where the learning, the digital backpacks with the SDG nuggets and with our soft skills, where all of that is going to be available to you, and where community starts to become seen in terms of that pod development. That's what we're doing in terms of the pods. And this is the Global Regeneration Corps, this whole broadcast. But tracking along with us has been Hugo. And Hugo has been absolutely an amazing partner because he lives with imagination. He imbues imagination. He inspires me every time I see his face and have the wonderful opportunity of being inside his hive mind that he has brought to the world for the GRC. So Hugo, over to you.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you for holding this space with me and with everyone else. I think this is a very important moment in our humanity. And Rick, could you please start the video, if you are so kind?
Be right with you, Hugo, just a second.
Thank you. So this is a bio art piece that I want to share with you, and I would like you to be ready because I'm gonna be honest, and I would like your hearts to be open as your souls, so we can channel also energy into this specific moment. I believe if we all use our imagination and channel for the future, then things get aligned and we can make it happen, because the future, it's happening today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, but we created today. So do you want me to share the screen on my side?
Yeah, it's frozen on my side. Why don't you try it? Go ahead.
Okay, let me just play it. So my name is Hugo Araujo, and I am here. I'm a human, so I represent the human species, and I'm alive. And I'm also present, and I'm a dreamer. I belong to what we call planet Earth, and in my mind, this is also the Isle of Blue. I have visions, and these visions happens when I'm sleeping, when I'm awake, but I'm always aware and alive. So this is about expressing, sharing, and sharing the beauty. It's sometimes they come as in the shape of a panther, a wild boar, a wolf, a whale, a human, but sometimes also about the planet. And what I have learned about the COVID is that we are all part of the same energy, and we cannot avoid that. This is part of the reality. I receive messages one after the other, and sometimes I try to run away until I find it somewhere else. I don't want to be a champion. I don't want to be in a strike. I just want to be present, and I want to be myself. So what is transformation if not continuous change? What is change is if not present and trying to build the future. I feel very often like a cicada, just molting, but in this case, my wings are digital. I'm here for shifting your perspective and talking about an ancient being, one of the oldest civilizations of our era. And this is about bacteria. So bacteria, they create light in the darkness in a process that is called bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is a collective decision-making process, but it's also a way to create symbiotic relationships with the host. The name of the bacteria that I would like you to be, it's Vibrio fischeri. And Vibrio fischeri create lights in a high-density population aspects, but we need to create it together. So the hive, it is really about 6 different questions. One is about the challenge. What is your power? What project you have, the network, the organism, the pod, because we believe that this is a time for us to manifest, the time for you to manifest. So please take this fractal voice and use it wisely. So the idea is to use a hive and create a formation to have a fractal voice to self-emerge together. This is about Global Regeneration Corps, the Code Red, and First Responder. So in the Global Regeneration Corps, you will find a link to go to complete your hive. And this is the way that it happens. So everyone has clarity. You have to put your email address. You have to create also a password, and you will have your own identity there. So it is up to you if you want to create it for you or for your organization. But each of us, we need an email to be present in this network. So once that you are there, then you have the possibility to share your camera, but also to create your own profile. So you have your email as a default, and then you put your name, and you can also put a picture. You can create this kind of picture, and if in my case, I prefer also to picture the world, and you have to click in the hexagon to make it happen. And then you can also pick your location and let us know in which other locations you are active. So maybe you are in Sierra Leone, but maybe you're also active in other places in the world. So put as many as you want, and that will be the opportunity to see other places and connect with other people. You will see the next one. So then you have 6 types of questions. So what are for you the most vital challenges, and in which one you are working? And then you will have a list of things that others are doing. If you want to click on those ones, it's okay as well. What is your power? So in terms of the bacteria, it's a decision-making process that is called quorum sensing. What is your project? We all have these projects of regeneration. So we want to know about it. We want to support you. We want to see what you are doing. To which network do you belong? Do you belong to one? Do you belong to many? Please bring it on. And which is your role? How do you see yourself? And what do you want to do as a pod? You want to mentor, to fund it, to join, to start. And once that the hive is completed, then you can go to see the network that is centered on yourself, and you can zoom in, zoom out, and play with it. It is a game-oriented network. And then, for example, being the Phoenix, it will release many other connections, and you will see the contacts, the email of someone else that is in the same kind of topic and mind-like people that would like to help you and to work with you towards regeneration. In the third screen, then we will see the globe, our Isle of Blue, and you will see the locations, and you also see this color red. This color red represents the gases in real time from specific sources that are open, so we can understand the code red that we are passing through. And you can spin the globe, and you can find people that are around your place, different kinds of people. Like, for example, in this case, We have Marlene, but we also can see Leslie is already there. So if you want to contact us, please go there and find our emails and our pictures, and find who is close to your place. So you can zoom in on the plus button, and you can see specifically around a place who is there. How can we find each other? How can we click? And this is just the beginning, because afterwards we will be making different kinds of connections. But this is already something. I already had a connection with Aliki that contacted me thanks to this one, I believe. And then you can also click on the different set of climate variables, so other gases, but also this is a tool to see the future. So when we click on humidity and wind, then we see our blue future. So please go there and create your hive and scan the QR code if you want. And from there, you can do it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Hugo. Just before we wrap up, Jim, I'm wondering, and Hugo, I'd like to just, if everybody in the chat could just give a word or two about where you've been over the last 2 hours. What kinds of emotions have you been feeling? What kind of insight have you have? What is the moment that's captured right now for you? Make yourself present in the chat so that we understand the ecology of the inner world that's taking place as we've been talking about the outer world. And I guess that's what it's all about, Hugo, in terms of when I go into my hive, I actually get to see an inner world of so many others that I would not normally see if I just saw a name on an email address. Are you frozen, Hugo? Are you there?
No, I'm completely here. I'm just reading all this rainbow of emotions that we see in the chat, and the opportunity is just amazing because having this fractal voice allows us to connect, and fractals, they tend to attract each other. So by changing in real time your position or your content, then you can keep connecting with others. So for example, my discovery is that by adding the different networks that I belong to, then I see the different people that are surrounding me that I didn't know that they were there. So it's really interesting. It's something that I cannot just go there and complete my information and it's static, but it's really something that changes all the time. It's real time. It's radical transparency. There is no algorithm behind this. This is just what it is. The information is there, it's open, and the connections are real.
And I think that's the beauty of this, is that at any moment I can change an answer and I'm open to a whole other insight into who's connected with me. And I think that's the beauty of what you've created. And so Hugo, it is with deep gratitude, because this has been a gift from you and from Ubiquity to our GRC, and you have dedicated so much time, and so have your programmers and coders, but it's been your artistry, your vision, your beauty that is reflected in this moment. And I just want to deeply thank you on behalf of all of us hivers for what you've brought to the world.
Thank you. I hope that this is going to help us to scale oneness, which is what we need. And I would like to give a special thanks to Ubiquity University, because thanks to them, we have all these spaces. And this is just a cumulative effort over many others that has been there before. So I want to honor that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Jim, for all of what you've done over these, 300 and many, many days. But for the last 12 days, I take a deep bow to you on behalf of all of us for how you've held the space for us to come in and really become the global regeneration core. You've birthed this with us. You've created the shape for it. You have held it with your passion and your brilliance. So deep gratitude to you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Hugo. And I want to acknowledge everybody else. This has been a collective effort to bring the Global Regeneration Core into being. It takes a village on this one, I think, as we've all been saying, and it's been my honor to play a small role in the center of this little thicket of activity and creativity and passion and love for the world. I know we're a little bit over time, but I just want to have a final word to the conveners that are still with us. And I'm just going to call your name, and if you can just take 30, 60 seconds just to give a final comment. And then we're going to end with Dita Vizoso, who's been there at the COP for a final word from her as well. Shelley, why don't we start with you, kind of in the order with which we appeared. Having gone through the last 2 hours, what's your takeaway?
I'm just so grateful for people and their enthusiasm and their good thoughts. And, you know, we can set up a hive, a worldwide hive. And that to me feels good because we're going to need to help each other. And so let's get to it.
Thank you, Shelley. Ed.
Hey, Jim, why don't we have everybody come on? It'll go faster.
Yeah, if everybody could turn on their videos. Ed, what's your takeaway from the COP this session? What's in your mind and heart?
I'm not talking about the COP anymore. That's in the past, and we need to forget about it.
That's gone. That's gone.
We're close. We're getting close to the chasm. We're getting close to turning this into mainstream. We're that far away. It's just a little push. And I think Uwe just gave us a little push. So let's do it.
Let's do it indeed. Thank you, Ed. Tom.
Yeah, I would say that, like COVID, and no way to minimize the millions of people who lost their lives in the destruction, there are gifts to be harvested. And with COP26, there are gifts to be harvested. And one of the gifts that COP26 has given us is the realization that there is no they. And we have to stop looking at the they to solve this. And there's a realization that there's each of us in our individual actions. And that's a wonderful gift to have harvested from COP26. And I think we should be grateful for that and move on with the individual and collective actions that are happening.
Brilliant. Thank you. There's no longer any they. It's only we. That's a very powerful statement. So thank you so much, Tom. Marilyn.
Yeah, so I'll follow that one up with that. The new Buddha is a Sangha. We are the ones. And I think the People's Declaration reveals that there is a huge power in the superorganism that we're emerging as. That's what I see. Thank you, Jim, for creating the possibilities for us to notice this. Thank you.
And thank you, Marilyn, for bringing in the notion of cities as regeneration hubs for Gaia. What a powerful image and the basis of a whole new story. So thank you.
It will come.
Stephanie.
Climate change and consciousness was born out of a vision that was delivered to me somatically. I have an internal somatic compass that has guided me straight to Humanity Rising as the continuation of the mission of climate change and consciousness. And I bow to you, Jim, for erecting a platform for collaborative unity. That is Humanity Rising. And I feel it is a fulfillment of the original vision, the action arm of climate change and consciousness. I am honored and grateful to be part of Humanity Rising.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for everything that you've done to bring in Alpha and Yusuf. I don't see Yusuf, but Alpha, any final comment from you?
Wow. I also want to say thanks to Stephanie and to all of you that organized this particular meeting. We are grateful of being part of this engagement, and we are hoping shared engagement will continue. As youth in Sierra Leone, we promise to do our best to see that climate change will be not a problem also in Sierra Leone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alpha. All the best.
Welcome.
Indra.
At this time to still be on mute. Yeah, thank you so much, Jim. And to be honest, every single one of the speakers today has shifted my own dial. And I'm going to remember this moment as an incredible starting point for something we've been waiting for 30, 50, however many decades you've been in this. This is what we've been waiting for, this moment of possibility. And I'm going to be banking on what Tom said to us today, which is a great notion, that most of the people are only pretending to be asleep. So let's see those people. Let's no longer live in hope of the governments doing this for us. Let's look at each other and let's know that they're ready to wake up and start to build with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to also, while we're closing, bring in Kurt Johnson and Rick Ulvik for any final words that you'd like to make. They've been partners for a very long time and have been present through our Humanity Rising sessions. Kurt, you have a final comment?
Yeah, well, absolute solidarity from all the networks of which I'm a part, and to say that this 2 weeks together have been so informative in this process. So just a huge thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Rick.
Yes, and the same from me. I just want to thank you, Jim, and I just want to let you know that we the world are standing with you for the Global Regeneration Corps, and we appreciate this work. So we have our 11 campaigns for change. So let's get them all involved with the Global Regeneration Corps. I think that would be great. And we also have, we're offering this possibility of the We Power America renewable energy media campaign and movement. So that could be a way to break through to mainstream media about the Global Regeneration Corps and get theoretically even millions of people involved. So just wanted to let you know about that. So we are with you, and thank you again. And people can go to we.net or about the We Power America campaign, we.net/WPA. And just to echo what someone started talking about before, as Jonathan Granoff said, when we launched the We campaign back in 2009, he said, I hope that we expand so much that there is no longer any they or them.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you so much, Rick. Before turning to Leslie and Hugo, Carlos Paz, if you're there, I'd love to have you say a word. Carlos has been so active in the Masters in Regenerative Action and the Global Regeneration Corps, and it's Carlos that enabled all the live streaming into the Spanish language. So Carlos, any final word? Oh, can't hear you. No.
He's not responding, Jim, to the audio, so.
We'll circle back, Carlos. Leslie, any final comment? Hugo?
Well, yes, but Dita hasn't spoken either, so I just wanted to flag Dita. So in terms of this moment in time, we were born in this moment for a reason. Those coming in are born for a reason, and we each have our own blueprint. It's not about unity under one blueprint. We each have a blueprint. And if we listen deeply, we know what it is. So I know what mine is. It's been beautifully birthed through becoming part of the GRC and Ubiquity University. And I don't know yet exactly how that blueprint's going to unfold, but I am committed to finding out. And so anytime when you're quiet, Just think for a moment, and that blueprint will be given in that moment so clearly that you know exactly what you need to do. That's my
Thank you,
thought.
Leslie. Hugo.
Dita is first, please.
No, I wanted to have
Okay.
Dita make the finals
Okay,
comments.
perfect. For me, I learned something from you, Jim, and I want to echo here. It's what a great time to be alive. And I think this is what it is. So being present and holding this space it means a lot to me. So thank you, everyone. And one of each of us can make the difference. So don't give up. Let's keep moving this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugo. Dita, you've been there in Glasgow. You've been very active in our programs, and I just thought it'd be nice to have you give us a little final word as we bring the program to a close.
Thank you. My connection is a bit unstable. I think a lot of people are at the moment trying to be online around here. It's been an amazing 2 weeks. I am exhausted. I do need a huge amount of rest at the moment, and I could feel that today there was the same for a lot of people on the streets. For me, I didn't come with any expectations about the official part of the COP, and I hear that dying of the dream, that letting go of a certain type of official hope. And the way I see it is as making space. I want to let go of that so I have space in myself, in my agency, in our agency to do this, to have this regenerative networks, this mycelia of communication. And that has been for me these last 2 weeks, is a huge networking event. 3 huge networking events. The official one, inside, who knows what's happening in reality. The activists, they have been networking like crazy. It's just amazing the amount of connections that have been coming out of those streets, people who suddenly realize, oh, we live close to each other, and we're going to start having a garden. And I have a machine that you need, and I'm going to share it with you. I heard that all the time happening everywhere. This has been an enormous fair of coming together and finding practical daily answers to our problems. And the third and somewhat surprising networking is the police. There's been a huge amount of police that has been brought from everywhere in the UK. And I've spoken to a number of them, and there is a change. I have felt a change in the way they see each other and the way they see how they want to interact with community. And I think that comes from that mycelial spread of people bringing love, people bringing consciousness, people bringing the need to change individually and collectively. So for me, one of the big absentees in this COP was that officially it was really present in the streets. Love was everywhere. And I want to finish. I could speak for hours about this experience, but for the sake of time, I just want to finish with something that Carl Jung wrote many years ago in The Undiscovered Self. Where love stops, power begins, and violence and terror. Where love stops, power begins, and violence and terror. And these are now my words. Love is for free. And we, each of us, everywhere in the world, have an enormous, endless supply. So that's what I'm taking from the COP. I'm taking love and giving love. Thank you, Jim, for this amazing opportunity. I can feel the love you put into this project and into everyone. And thanks all the panelists, all the people who have spoken in these 2 weeks. It's been such a beautiful experience. I feel expanded and upgraded in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Dita. And thank you all. I think Dita provided a beautiful final word. I had a feeling you would, Dita, as you've been so eloquent every day. And I just want to acknowledge that. And I think my final comment as we close is I think what has come through this session is very profound, that something died at COP26. And I think what died is the they. And what is now the only choice for humanity that's left for us is the we. And the torch has now been passed. And how we internalize who we are, what priorities we now set for ourselves, how we now manifest the love of the we, even to those of the we that we still want to call the they, is going to determine to a very significant degree how we navigate into now the escalating turbulence of our world, but in a way and with a clarity and with a purpose and with a definitive activity. We know that we can still turn things around, and that's the only option left. And we have to do it in love. I think that's the bottom line at the end of COP26. We have to do it in love. Thank you, everyone. We will see you again on Monday for more of Humanity Rising as we move beyond the COP to other equally important matters. But I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for an unbelievable 12 days. This has been totally transformational for me personally, I think for Humanity Rising, and is the perfect launch for the Global Regeneration Corps. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.